He thought he'd committed the perfect murder, carefully planned, meticulously executed. A convincing alibi ready. But there was one thing he didn't account for. One detail that would destroy every lie he told. 8 security cameras, 47 motion sensors, and 16 hours of footage capturing every single moment. He didn't realize everything was being recorded, and that mistake would cost him everything.
The 911 call came from a neighbor at 3:34 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. They'd heard screaming from the house next door. Loud crashes, then silence. The kind of silence that feels wrong. When police arrived at the upscale suburban home, they found the front door unlocked. They entered cautiously, calling out. What they discovered in the master bedroom would launch an investigation that seemed destined to go unsolved until technology revealed a truth the killer never imagined could be exposed. Robert Chen, age 52, successful businessman, loving husband and stepfather, was dead. The scene suggested a violent struggle. The medical examiner would later determine he'd been struck multiple times with a blunt object, then suffocated. Time of death was estimated between 2 o'clock and 3 p.m. The initial investigation seemed to hit immediate dead ends. Robert's wife, Margaret, had been at work with dozens of witnesses confirming her presence during the time of death. The couple's biological children were away at college. The only other person with regular access to the home was Margaret's son from a previous marriage-40-4-year-old Brandon Hayes, who lived in the converted basement apartment. Brandon was cooperative when police first questioned him. He said he'd been out running errands during the afternoon. He'd left around 1 p.m. and returned around 4:30 p.m. to find police cars everywhere. He seemed appropriately shocked and devastated. He had no apparent motive. Robert had been paying for Brandon's living expenses and had even promised to help him start a business. But Detective Lisa Morrison had spent 20 years reading people, and something about Brandon's reaction bothered her. Not anything obvious, just a sense that the shock seemed performed rather than genuine, that his timeline was too precise, too rehearsed, that his grief felt shallow. Still, instincts aren't evidence, and without physical evidence or witnesses, the case seemed likely to go cold. Brandon had no scratches or injuries suggesting he'd been in a fight. His clothing showed no blood. His alibi, while uncorroborated, was plausible. There was nothing to contradict his story. Until Detective Morrison asked a simple question. Does the house have security cameras? Margaret Chen, devastated by her husband's death, initially said no. They'd talked about installing them but never got around to it. But then she paused. Wait, Robert did mention something about setting up cameras a few months ago. He was worried about package theft. I don't know if he actually did it. A search of the house revealed what would become the prosecution's entire case. Robert Chen, concerned about neighborhood property crimes, had installed a comprehensive home security system 3 months earlier. 8 cameras covering the exterior and main interior rooms, motion sensors throughout the house, and a cloud-based storage system that automatically backed up all footage. Robert had never mentioned the full extent of the system to anyone. He'd casually mentioned the outdoor cameras, but had kept the indoor cameras quiet, perhaps wanting to avoid the surveillance. State arguments with his privacy-conscious wife and stepson, Brandon Hayes, had no idea those cameras existed. And for 16 hours leading up to and following Robert's murder, every camera had been recording. The footage, when investigators finally accessed it, was devastating to Brandon's story. It showed everything. And what it showed was a premeditated murder carried out by someone who believed he was acting in complete privacy. The timeline, reconstructed from multiple camera angles and timestamps, told a story Brandon had desperately tried to hide. 1:47 p.m. Brandon is seen on basement camera, leaving his apartment and heading upstairs. He's carrying something wrapped in a towel, later identified as a hammer, from his tool collection. 1:52 p.m. Kitchen camera captures Brandon entering, checking his phone, then deliberately disconnecting the Wi-Fi router. He believed this would disable the cameras. It didn't. The system had cellular backup that he didn't know about. 1:58 p.m. Hallway camera shows Brandon approaching Robert's home office. Robert is visible working at his computer, headphones on, unaware. 2:03 p.m. The attack begins. The footage is difficult to watch. Brandon strikes Robert from behind. Robert tries to defend himself, knocking over a lamp, pulling papers from his desk. The struggle continues for nearly 3 minutes. 2:06 p.m. The footage shows Brandon using a pillow to suffocate Robert after the initial assault. This contradicts any possible self-defense claim. This is murder, captured in real time. From multiple angles, 2:11 p.m. Brandon sits on the floor, catching his breath. The camera captures his face clearly. He's not horrified or panicked. He's calm. He checks Robert's pulse. Then he methodically begins staging the scene to look like a robbery gone wrong. For the next 40 minutes, the cameras capture Brandon's cover-up. He ransacks drawers and closets, making it look like someone searched for valuables. He takes Robert's wallet and watch items later found hidden in Brandon's apartment. He cleans the hammer and returns it to his basement. He changes his clothes, putting the originals in a trash bag. At 2:53 p.m., Brandon leaves through the back door, which has no camera. He takes the trash bag with him. At 3:12 p.m., a neighbor's security camera, later obtained by police, shows Brandon's car passing by the neighborhood. He's gone for over an hour, presumably disposing of evidence. At 4:28 p.m., Brandon returns home. The cameras show him approaching the front door, seeing the police cars, and his face transforming into a mask of shock and grief. It's an Oscar-worthy performance. Except it's being captured by cameras he didn't know existed. When Detective Morrison first reviewed this footage, she knew immediately the case was solved. But she made a strategic decision. Don't tell Brandon about the cameras yet. Let him commit to his story. Let him lie in his official statement. Let him dig his hole deeper. Brandon was brought in for a formal interview 2 days after the murder. The interrogation room had the standard recording equipment, clearly visible. Brandon knew he was being recorded there. What he didn't know was that investigators had already reviewed 16 hours of footage showing exactly what he'd done. The interrogation is a masterclass in letting a suspect destroy himself. Detective Morrison asked open-ended questions, letting Brandon elaborate on his alibi. Where exactly did he go that afternoon? What route did he take? What time did he leave? What time did he return? Brandon provided detailed answers, confidently maintaining his story. He'd left around 1 p.m. to run errands. Went to the bank, then the hardware store, then grabbed lunch. Returned around 4:30 p.m. Never entered the main house that day. Was shocked to find police there. Every word was a lie. And every lie was contradicted by time-stamped video evidence. Detective Morrison asked about his relationship with Robert. Brandon said it was great. Robert had been like a real father to him. He was devastated by the loss. He couldn't imagine who would do this. More lies. Investigators had already found his internet search history. How to kill someone without leaving evidence. Do security cameras work when Wi-Fi is off? How long before body decomposition? Life insurance beneficiary stepchild. The searches dated back 6 weeks. They'd also found his motive. Robert had recently discovered that Brandon had been stealing from the family business, small amounts at first, then increasingly larger sums totaling nearly $50,000. Robert had confronted Brandon 2 days before the murder, threatening to press charges unless the money was repaid immediately. Brandon had no way to repay it. he was facing prison time. Unless Robert wasn't around to testify that after 3 hours of interrogation, Detective Morrison made her move. She pulled out a laptop and turned it to face Brandon. "Brandon, I want to show you something." She pressed play. The screen showed security camera footage. Brandon entering the kitchen, disconnecting the Wi-Fi router, checking to see if it worked. Brandon's face went white. "Where did that come from?" "Your stepfather's security system. The one you didn't know about." That's not. I can explain. We have everything, Brandon. The entire afternoon. Every room. Multiple angles. We watched you attack Robert. We watched you stage the scene. We watched you leave to dispose of evidence. We watched you come back and pretend to be shocked. We have 16 hours of footage showing exactly what you did. The transformation was immediate. The mask of innocent grief disappeared. In its place was cold calculation. Brandon stopped talking immediately and requested a lawyer, but it was too late. He'd already committed to his false story in multiple recorded statements. He'd lied to police repeatedly. And most importantly, the video evidence was irrefutable. The trial was surprisingly short. The defense had no real strategy. They couldn't dispute the footage. It clearly showed Brandon committing the murder. They tried to argue the security system had been illegal, recording people without consent. The judge rejected that argument. It was Robert's home. He had every right to install security cameras. They tried to argue the footage had been tampered with. Forensic analysis proved it hadn't. The timestamps were accurate. The metadata was intact. The footage was authentic. They tried to argue diminished capacity, that Brandon hadn't been in his right mind. The footage showed him calmly planning and executing the murder, then methodically covering up evidence. A person having a mental break doesn't spend 40 minutes staging a crime scene. The prosecution didn't even need to call many witnesses. They simply played the security footage. The jury watched as Brandon attacked Robert from behind. Watched the struggle. Watched the suffocation. Watched the cold, calculated cover-up. They showed Brandon's interrogation footage, his confident lies about his alibi and whereabouts. Then they showed the security camera footage from the same times, proving every statement false. The defense made one final argument, even with the video. How could they prove premeditation versus a sudden act of violence? The prosecution responded by showing Brandon's internet search history from weeks before, showing he'd been planning this. They showed financial records proving motive. They showed text messages where Brandon had tried to determine when Robert would be home alone. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty of first-degree murder. At sentencing, the judge addressed Brandon directly. "You planned to kill your stepfather. You executed that plan with cold precision. You staged a crime scene. You lied to investigators. You showed no remorse. And you believed you'd gotten away with it because you underestimated both technology and the investigators pursuing you. Your arrogance was your downfall. You didn't realize everything was being recorded." Brandon Hayes was sentenced to life without possibility of parole. Margaret Chen, who'd lost her husband and effectively her son, gave a victim impact statement that captured the tragedy. "Robert installed those cameras to protect our home from strangers. He never imagined the real threat was already inside. Brandon lived in our home, ate at our table, accepted Robert's support and generosity, and he repaid that kindness with murder. The cameras didn't just catch his crime. They exposed his true nature, someone capable of looking me in the eye at Robert's funeral and lying about what he'd done." The case became famous in law enforcement circles as an example of how modern surveillance technology has revolutionized investigations. 15 years ago, Brandon's crime might have gone unsolved. Without witnesses or physical evidence, it would have been nearly impossible to prove. But the proliferation of home security systems means crimes, once committed in privacy, are now being documented without criminals realizing it. Detective Morrison uses the case in training sessions. Criminals still think like it's 1990. They plan crimes assuming they can't be seen. They don't account for doorbell cameras, home security systems, traffic cameras, cell phone tracking, security footage from businesses. One guy told me he'd planned the perfect crime because there were no witnesses. I told him there were 8 witnesses, 8 cameras. You just didn't know they were watching. The footage is sometimes shown in criminal justice, classes with faces blurred and identifying details removed, as an example of how suspects incriminate themselves by underestimating modern surveillance. Brandon's confident lies during interrogation become more damning with every word when you've already seen the video of what really happened. For Robert Chen, no conviction can restore what she lost. Robert is still gone. Brandon, whom she'd raised from age 12, whom she'd loved as a son, revealed himself to be capable of horrific evil. The home where they'd built a life together is now a documented crime scene she can't bear to live in. I watch those videos sometimes, she admitted in a victim advocacy interview. I know I shouldn't, but I need to understand how someone I thought I knew could do that. And what I see in the footage is someone I never knew at all. The boy I raised never existed. He was always this, always capable of this. And I wonder how I missed it. The security system Brandon didn't know about cost $3,200 to install. It captured evidence that put him in prison for life. Robert Chen's investment in home security, meant to protect against theft, ended up serving a far more important purpose, ensuring his killer couldn't escape justice. Brandon Hayes is currently serving his sentence at a maximum security facility. He's attempted appeal after appeal, all denied. The video evidence is too clear. His lies too documented. His guilt too obvious. The irony isn't lost on anyone involved. Brandon committed murder believing he was acting in privacy, believing no one would ever know what really happened, believing he could craft whatever narrative he wanted. Instead, every moment was captured, every lie exposed, every crime documented in high definition from multiple angles. In the age of surveillance, privacy is an illusion. And for Brandon Hayes, that illusion cost him everything. Robert Chen may not have known why he was installing those cameras, may not have imagined they'd be used to solve his own murder. But in death, he left behind the evidence that would ensure his killer faced justice. The cameras are still there, in that empty house. Still recording. Still watching. Because in the modern world, someone is always watching. And killers who don't realize that make the work of justice much easier.